Today we're going to talk about what is one of my more memorable missions. Over my last few years, or my career if you will, there's several missions that stand out as being more memorable for one reason or another. And this is one of them. And I think about halfway through this video, you'll start to see why this stuck out as being a little more memorable. I got called to conduct a critical patient transfer from St. Anthony and St. John's. So the plan was to depart Gander, right here, head towards St. Anthony, then go straight to St. John's. Because of the weather, we would have to hold Gander as an alternate because we're going to be doing this all IFR. So to get back to Gander is right there. 530 nautical miles, well within the capability of the Cormorant. Starting to get towards the end of a full tank of gas, but we could do it. The challenge was the weather. There was a big old band of freezing rain sitting out here that was heading that way. So the race was kind of on to get this done and get out of St. John's before the freezing rain hit St. John's. And the Cormorant is not certified to fly in freezing rain. In fact, most aircraft aren't.
So we were tasked for a critical patient transfer of a female from St. Anthony going to St. John's. The patient was very stable. She just needed like a routine blood transfusion. So. On our way out of St. Anthony, we had a tailwind. We were able to essentially book it back to St. John's, especially because we were concerned about the weather coming in. Lots of freezing rain, which we can't fly through.
The weather was moving a little faster than expected. So we were really trying to speed things up along. So we had arranged hot refueling ahead of time. This would save us valuable minutes to get out of St. John's. On our way to St. John's, we got a phone call from RCC saying they might have another mission for us. So I wasn't really sure on the mission or the details. They just said you might have to go to Goose Bay. So for us, the plan didn't overly change. We were just going to take as much fuel as we could out of St. John's and get out of there before the freezing rain hit. Forecast had changed. Freezing rain was now hitting Gander, which it wasn't supposed to, but it was. And freezing rain was just minutes away from hitting St. John's.
So luckily we made it in St. John's before the freezing rain hit. Hot refueled in St. John's, trying to beat the freezing rain, like get back home. As we were refueling, we got retasked. Yeah, so we got retasked for a 2-month-old out of Goose Bay who needed to come back to St. John's to the Children's Hospital. She had a type of, and she obviously was a child, so the only place she could go in Newfoundland that would accept her was St. John's.
So even looking at the distances here, St. John's to Goose Bay is 450 miles. Not that bad. It's just a little under 4 hours. With a headwind, still under 4 hours. With a tailwind, probably about 3 hours. So we're going to fly there, stop, land, pick up fuel, and then proceed back to St. John's.
We beat the freezing rain out of St. John's, so we keep pediatric equipment here at the shop in Gander, and just like blood pressure cuffs and different things that are very specialized to a neonate, so essentially a newborn. And we weren't able to stop in St. John's, we weren't able to come back to Gander because of the freezing rain was also in Gander. So we had to overfly. We tried to coordinate essentially pediatric equipment waiting for us in Goose Bay. So we were pretty concerned about pediatrics, and more so I'd say because I don't have equipment, I don't have experience with pediatrics. Like, I don't have a kid, my team member didn't have a kid, both our pilots didn't have children, so our flight engineer was the only one who actually had experience with a brand new baby, newish baby, 2 months old. So we spent the whole transit over from St. John's to Goose Bay, preparing all our equipment in the back.
As we proceeded to Goose Bay, things got a little more complicated. The weather, the freezing rain that was forecast to blow right through St. John's, wasn't going to. It was going to stick around for a considerable amount of time. This meant Gander and St. John's were both shut down. So we were going to be stuck up here in Goose Bay, and we were trying to find a spot to drop off this patient. We wanted to help this 2-month-old, but we didn't know where to bring it. We couldn't bring it to St. John's. We tried Cornerbrook Hospital. The doctor there did not want to take the patient. The doctor there was not comfortable taking on that patient with the condition the patient had, that 2-month-old had. So the only other option we had, or the only other option that there was to take the patient to Halifax, which is all the way down here. Kind of far away. So on the way up there, the SARTECs and I, the whole crew in fact, were discussing what could we do.
We were trying to come up with a plan because we knew at this point that St. John's was iced in and we couldn't go back into St. John's. So the thought was, okay, maybe a HERC will meet us in Deer Lake, we'll pass the child over in the HERC, and they can go to Halifax.
I didn't really like that plan too much. Like, it kind of made sense, but it also didn't. There was a lot of moving parts to that plan. Luckily, as I mentioned earlier, we had a bit of a tailwind coming in from the north.
Luckily for us, as we got into Goose Bay, Matt was on weather right away, and fuel calcs and time calculations for our crew day, and he figured out that we could go straight from Goose Bay to Halifax in one hop. We would make our crew day, we would have enough fuel, and we would be able to drop the child off to appropriate care. So coming into Goose, we were definitely more reassured knowing that was the plan, but there was obviously still some reservations about traveling with a 2-month-old in a helicopter.
From Goose Bay straight to Halifax, IFR, and maintain a legal alternate of Greenwood. Some total 580 nautical miles. I should be able to do that route. It would be at the edge of what our crew day was, our flying day, and what the Cormorant's range was, but we should be able to do it.
No, we didn't have a flight team. Originally, like we had talked about passing the patient over to the HERC in Deer Lake so the HERC could go into Halifax. Once we got our hands on the patient, we kind of felt like she was ours, and my team member had a really kind of attachment to the child, and he just, he turned around and told me, this is our patient, we're going to take her the whole way. So so there was some relief and a bit of excitement in the sense that we were able to provide care and really do the mission and not delay it, right? So meeting with the HERC, making sure like the HERC would make it into Corner Brook, and then traveling out, or Deer Lake, then traveling out to Halifax would just delay things more and more. And knowing we could straight hop to Halifax was a relief, for everyone.
We flew well into the morning into Halifax. We landed in Halifax. The ambulance was on time. The ambulance met us. As always, we get one of the SAR-techs to guide the ambulance around to the chopper so as to not inadvertently hit something. And we dropped off the patients. At that point, we were well into the morning. We had flown all night and we were exhausted. So we did what little maintenance we had to do on the aircraft, and we went to sleep.
So the ambulance was waiting for us at the pad in Halifax, and our crew day was expired, so we spent the night in Halifax.
The interesting part is the following day, I actually had a flight to catch in Gander going back to Halifax. So I had to leave Halifax very early, fly all the way to Gander, and then get on a commercial flight to go back to Halifax. So I had request from the rest of my crew to meet in the lobby at 5 in the morning. And true to the character of that crew, they all met in the lobby at 5 to 5 without a single complaint. And there we are, we taxied out, and still in the darkness at night in Halifax on a very foggy, early morning. And we flew into daylight back to Gander, and I made my flight. So the reason this mission was a little more memorable for me was the length of it, the complications in dealing with the weather and the distances of the Cormorant, as well as the passenger, the patient that we're dealing with, 2-month-old. And as well, we didn't have a flight crew for either patient transfer. It was all on the SAR-techs themselves to manage the patient. We were kind of on our own to deal with all this, and we dealt with it, or they dealt with it quite well, I would like to add. That was one of my more memorable missions. And the lengths were pretty substantial. I think we ended up flying 12 hours that one day, and we got to about 16, 17 hours crew day through the night.